Let's discuss descriptive study. Descriptive study is a type of observational study. It is population-based study. It describes the patterns of disease. We will discuss this lecture according to following learning objectives. We will discuss the definition of descriptive study. Then we will discuss the framework of descriptive study. Then we will discuss various applications of descriptive study. Then we will discuss the uses of descriptive study. In the end, we will summarize the session. So, what is descriptive study? Descriptive study is an observational study which describes the patterns of disease occurrence in relation to variables such as time, place, and person. So, it is an observational study and it describes the patterns of disease occurrence. How disease is occurring in relation with variables such as time, place, and person. When disease is occurring, where disease is occurring, who is getting the disease. So, we can say that it is a population-based study. We will define the population or we will describe the population. It shows the burden. We measure the burden of certain disease in descriptive study. Variables used in study are time, place, and person. When the disease is occurring. Place, where the disease is occurring. Person who is getting the disease. A disease must be occurring in a certain place. Someone is getting the disease, and disease must be time specific. Now we will discuss the framework or steps of descriptive study. First, we will define the population. Then we will define the disease under study. Then we will describe the disease according to time, place, and person. Then we will measure the burden of disease. Longitudinal study will measure incidence and cross-sectional study will measure prevalence of disease. Then we will do comparison with known indices. In the end, we will formulate the hypothesis. So, what is framework? We will define the population. We will define the population according to composition. A population is divided in various groups. It can be divided according to age. It can be divided according to gender. It can be divided according to socioeconomic status. It can be divided according to occupation. Like we say that population living in Sialkot, age of season is different. It can have male and female. Socioeconomic condition of population varies. Occupation of population varies. Some people have low socioeconomic status. Some have higher socioeconomic status. Some people are doctors. Some are engineers. Some are students. So occupation is different. Some are children. Some are older ones. Then we can say a population pyramid. A population pyramid describes the composition of population. It describes the composition according to gender. It describes the composition according to age. Like base shows younger ones and tip shows older ones. Right side has females and left side has male. It is an ideal representation of population composition. If base is broader, we can say that children are greater in number and the population under study may have greater diseases of children. It may have greater infant mortality. And tip, if tip is not broader, or tip, we can say that older population is lesser in numbers. Then we will define the disease under study. How we will define the disease under study? It will be defined according to operational definition. What is operational definition? It is accurate definition or precise definition. We define the disease. It shows the symptoms. It should show the diagnostic criteria. Like if we define typhoid fever according to operational definition, typhoid has two significant features like relative bradycardia. Relative bradycardia is present in typhoid. It shows stepladder pattern. What is stepladder pattern? Fever is of gradual onset. So we define that presence of high grade, continuous fever. Fever of typhoid is continuous. What is meant by continuous fever? It is only relieved by medications. The presence of high grade continuous fever. Now we will describe the significant features of typhoid. Relative bradycardia. Relative bradycardia and step-ladder pattern. And shows culture positive. Culture is diagnostic test for typhoid fever. Positive is called typhoid fever. So this is the operational definition of typhoid. It describes the pattern of typhoid. It describes the symptoms of typhoid. It describes the diagnosis of typhoid. Operational definition is used in the study. It is precise definition. Individuals who fulfill this criteria are included in this study. Now we'll describe the disease by time, place, and person. Time, when the disease is occurring. Place, where the disease is occurring. Person, who is getting the disease. Let's discuss time trends. There are certain time fluctuations. They are short-term, fluctuations. They are periodic. They are secular. These are various time fluctuations. What are short-term fluctuations? Epidemic describes the short-term fluctuations. They are seasonal and cyclic trends. Certain diseases appear in every season. Certain diseases appear in a cycle. And what are secular trends? They are long-term trends or transitions. Now, epidemic. What is epidemic? Epidemic is unusual occurrence of disease. When cases may arise up to 4 times, this is epidemic. Or presence of new case is epidemic. Epidemic has 3 types. They are common source, propagated epidemic, and then slow epidemic. What is common source epidemic? A food poisoning is common source epidemic. Eat outside. You can get food poisoning. So we can give example of food poisoning in common source epidemic. What is example of propagated epidemic? It spreads from person to person, like epidemic of communicable diseases. Epidemic of measles is propagated. Epidemic of malaria is propagated. Epidemic of dengue fever is propagated epidemic. What is slow epidemic? Epidemic of chronic diseases like hypertension, diabetes. They are slow epidemics. So we describe the time according to short-term fluctuations. Epidemic is the best example. And we describe that there are 3 types of epidemic: common source epidemic, propagated epidemic, and slow epidemic. Now we'll describe the disease according to periodic fluctuations. There are two periodic fluctuations. A trend seasonal and cyclic. Seasonal trends show that disease occurs in every season. You may get the disease in every season, like measles is present in winters. We can give example of measles. Measles is present in winter season. Then pneumonia. Pneumonia occurs in every winter season. Then typhoid shows seasonal trend. Typhoid fever occurs from August to November season. Malaria shows seasonal trend. Cases of malaria occur in every season from June to November. Dengue fever shows seasonal trend. Influenza shows cyclic trend. Like we can say that influenza occurs after a cycle of 7 to 10 years. It can take 7 to 10 years. Now we will discuss the disease according to secular trends. What are secular trends? They show the transition of disease over a certain period of time with advancement in technology, with advancement in treatment. Certain diseases are reduced, or burden of certain diseases is reduced, like burden of communicable diseases is reduced after interventions of vaccination, whereas burden of chronic diseases is increased due to our lifestyle. So these are secular trends. Our burden of cancers is increasing, we can say number of cancers is increasing, whereas infectious diseases is reducing, decreasing. Now we will describe the disease according to place. What is a global village? There are international variations. Disease may be associated with certain countries, certain regions. It is associated, it is not attributed. And then there are national variations. Then there are local variations. What are international variations? We can say colon cancer is associated with America. Why we say this? Because cases of colon cancer are greater in America. Colon cancer. We can say that tuberculosis is associated with Pakistan because number of cases of tuberculosis are greater in Pakistan, and polio is also associated with Pakistan. These are international variations. Yellow fever. Yellow fever is predominant in Africa. Cases of yellow fever are present in Africa, so it is associated with Africa. These are international trends of a disease. Then we move to national variations. A country like Pakistan is divided into various regions. Pakistan has hilly areas, Pakistan has plain areas. Like we can say that goiter is present in hilly areas. Hepatitis B and C, they are dominant in Punjab. Then there are local variations. What are local variations? We can give example of Lahore. Lahore has developed regions and developing regions are slums. Diseases like communicable diseases, they may be present or may be predominant in slums. Chronic diseases may be predominant in developed areas. So these are various variations. First, we discuss international, then national, then local. These are place variation. Population of Pakistan is divided into rural and urban regions. There are two regions, rural regions and urban. 70% of population is residing in rural areas. So disease patterns may vary in both areas, like certain diseases are predominant in rural areas, like we can say that snake bite is predominant in rural population. Dog bite is predominant in the rural population. But accidents, they are common in urban population. Industrial hazards, they are predominant in urban population. Chronic diseases, they are predominant in urban population. Why we study these various trends? Cause we need to take interventions. A disease which is common in certain population, we need to develop a health system. We need to provide health facilities to this population. We need to provide snake bite control facilities or snake bite treatment facilities or dog bite vaccination to rural population. We have to take interventions according to accidents or industrial hazards or chronic diseases in urban population because we want to control the burden of disease. We want to prevent the disease. And we describe the disease according to person. There are certain characteristics of a person like age, gender, occupation. Disease pattern varies in different ages, different age groups. We can say children, adults, and old ones. Anemia, malnutrition is predominant in children. Adults may have stress. Old people may suffer from hypertension, diabetes. So diseases vary according to age. We need to take intervention according to age. In Pakistan, our population has more children than older ones. So we need to take interventions in children to control the disease pattern. And gender. Certain diseases are predominant in certain genders, like we can say that males have more incidence of ischemic heart disease as compared with females. The females have more incidence of diabetes mellitus as compared with males. They are predominant in certain genders. And we can say that typhoid is predominant in males due to their habits, due to their eating habits. ST is more common in females. How occupation affects. Person working in different occupations suffer from various diseases. Like we can say that cities have industry and people working there, or people working in sugarcane industry develop bichinosis, develop गलती है बिगोसिस है develop bigosis. And marital status also affects the health. Studies show that persons who are married have lesser incidence of depression and lesser incidence of anxiety. Socioeconomic status also affects. Like we say that tuberculosis is the disease of poor. It is predominant in poor. Why it is predominant in poor? Because they have poor lifestyle. They have poor life standards. They have poor hygiene. And obesity is predominant in rich people. Why? They eat fast food. They have lesser physical activity. Then migration. Over the years, people from different countries migrated to different countries. So they may take the disease to other country, or in context of coronavirus, we can say that people traveling and those who are asymptomatic can spread the disease to other country where they are traveling. So coronavirus incidence or burden of coronavirus has increased due to migration. Then we will measure the burden of disease. We will calculate incidence and prevalence. Incidence can be calculated by longitudinal studies. And prevalence can be calculated by cross-sectional studies. This is a common MCQ that burden or prevalence of disease is calculated in cross-sectional study. Incidence should be measured in longitudinal study. What is longitudinal study? Longitudinal study is a prospective study. It is a forward study in which we move from cause to effect, or we move forward in direction of time. We study a group of population. We study a group of population over time, and then we assess this group and measure the incidence. We study this group at various time periods. Time 1, time 2, and time 3. Group is same. Then, what are various advantages or disadvantages of longitudinal study? It has certain advantages. Like main advantages, measurement of incidence. It has certain disadvantages. Like it is time taking. It can take months, years. It is expensive. Now we summarize the longitudinal study. Now we discuss cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study is population-based study. We take a sample from the population, like, for example, this is total population. We take a sample. We'll observe the sample over time. And then we will see that some people are diseased while some are non-diseased. Then we'll calculate the prevalence. What is prevalence? Total number of cases. Prevalence shows how many percent people have the disease in a certain population. Like, we take a reference population. We take a sample. What is sample? Sample is a portion of whole. It represents the total population. So it must have characteristics of total population. And then we will observe the sample. Then we will make assessment. And measure prevalence of a disease. This study has various advantages, like what is main advantage of descriptive study? Prevalence can be measured. It is cheap. It is not time taking. No money, lesser money is required for descriptive study, and it has certain drawbacks. It can have bias. What is bias? It is systemic error. Bias may occur due to selection. Bias may occur due to analysis. And it can't find temporal association or can't measure temporal association. What is temporal association? Temporal association is association of risk factor and outcome. Now, we'll compare with known indices. We'll do comparison. We can do comparison. We can do internal comparison and external comparison. We can compare the same population. or indices of same population, or we can compare our result with different population. Then we'll formulate the hypothesis. What is hypothesis? It is an assumption made on the basis of observation. So we can say that in the end we will assume or we will formulate a hypothesis. What are various components of hypothesis? It must have a risk factor. It must have some population. It must have some duration. It must have dose and it must have outcome like in case of smoking. Risk factor is smoking. What is population? In this case, it is smokers population. Duration, it must have 20 to 30 years duration. Dose, quantity of cigarettes, and outcome. It can cause lung cancer. So smoking causes lung cancer in smokers. So we can say smoking of 20 to 30 cigarettes per day for more than 20 years. More than 20 years. 20 years duration. Smoking is risk factor. 20 to 30 cigarettes dose can cause lung cancer. In 10 to 20% smokers. This is complete hypothesis. It is showing the risk factor. It is showing the quantity or dose. It is showing the duration. It is showing the disease. It is showing the population. So, complete hypothesis must have risk factor. It must have duration. It must have dose. It must have outcome. It must have certain population. Hypothesis is based on our observation. We did certain observation. On the basis of this observation, we made a hypothesis. This shows association. It is not cause. It is not attrition. It is not attribution of a disease. Then, where this study is applied? What is the application of this study? This study is applied on a population, or it is population-based study. This is applied for observation. No intervention is done in descriptive study. Then what are various uses? Why we do this observation? Why we do descriptive study? We do descriptive study to find the burden. It is a common scenario in exam. You want to find the burden of malaria in a population. Which type of study you will conduct? Your answer must be descriptive study. Then incidence is measured. Then prevalence is measured. The study is used for planning. We make planning and then we'll do management. Like we said that smoking causes lung cancer. So we will plan how can we reduce the burden of smoking. We'll do certain legislations. Then we will implement this plan. How we'll manage. We'll guide our population. We'll provide health education measures. We will do certain smoking cessation programs, rehab programs. That's how we will manage this problem and we can reduce the burden. We will apply this study in our population to reduce the burden of lung cancer. Then, in the end, we will summarize the session. We discussed descriptive study. We discussed it's a population-based study. So, a population-based study in which disease is studied. And in the end, hypothesis is generated. is called descriptive study. Now we'll discuss them. In population, we'll describe the composition of population. We will define the population according to composition. In disease, first we'll define the disease according to operational definition. We'll precisely and accurately define the disease under study. Like, we define that presence of high-grade fever, high-grade continuous fever, which shows relative bradycardia and step-ladder pattern and shows blood culture positive for Salmonella typhi is called typhoid fever. So this is operational definition. Then we will describe the disease according to time, place, and person. Then we'll discuss how to measure the burden. We measure the burden. We measured incidence in longitudinal study. We measured prevalence in cross-sectional study. Then we compared our indices with previous indices. We compared our population results with other population results. On the basis of this, on the basis of population definition, on the basis of disease definition, on the basis of disease description, on the basis of measurement, comparison, we formulate a hypothesis. Hypothesis. What is hypothesis? It is an assumption. We describe that a hypothesis must contain risk. It must have certain outcome. And this outcome depends on dose and duration. Like we said that smoking causes lung cancer. But smoking of 20 to 30 cigarettes per day can cause lung cancer. If someone smokes for more than 20 years, but it is not 100%, it is not in 100% smokers. It can occur in 10 to 20% of smokers. This was framework of descriptive study. Then we discuss the application and uses of descriptive study. This study is applied on a population, used to measure the burden of disease by incidence and prevalence, used in planning and management. We do planning, like we said that smoking causes lung cancer. So we need to prevent smoking. We need to take certain measures to prevent smoking. We need to take certain measures to protect our population. We'll do planning on the basis of this study. If 20 to 30% of our population is smoker, we do intervention in this population. We make a plan. We allot some budget. We train our health workers. Then we will implement this plan. We'll do certain legislative measures. We'll do certain control measures. We'll do certain rehab programs for smoking cessation. We have to motivate our population. We have to control this burden to reduce lung cancer. If we apply this intervention and interventions are applied successfully, burden of lung cancer is reduced in the population. Burden of typhoid can be reduced in this population. As we know, typhoid spreads from fecal-oral route. Our population is vulnerable due to poor hygiene, poor lifestyle. We apply measures. We apply hygiene measures. We apply health education. We can provide diagnostic measures. And then this disease is controlled. Malaria, we described that it shows seasonal trend. Cases of malaria appear in every season. Why not prevent malaria rather than treating malaria? How will prevent? We will prevent this by controlling mosquito breeding places. We know malaria spreads through water. Malaria is a water-related disease. We discussed measles is a seasonal disease. We can limit the burden of measles by vaccination, by hygiene, by health education. We discussed dengue fever shows seasonal trend. We all know it is present in Pakistan from August to November. It spreads through a mosquito. How we know it spreads through a mosquito? By observational studies. Observation shows that malaria, dengue spreads through a mosquito known as Aedes aegypti. So we have to reduce burden. We can reduce this burden by control measures. We can control vector. We can control the spread by controlling the vector, by controlling the breeding places of dengue. That's how we studied the pattern of disease. We knew that this factor can cause this disease. We can apply interventions. We can break the chain. We can break the chain of transmission of malaria. We can break the chain of transmission of dengue through this study. So we can say that descriptive study is a type of observational study. It's a population-based study. We study the disease according to certain variables like time, place, and person. We know when the disease is occurring, where the disease is occurring, who is getting the disease. So we apply this observation, we will apply this study in our population to reduce the burden of study. That's all for descriptive study.